the session, I would like to give a quick introduction about Proventures for all the participants who are joining for the first time. So Proventures is a 360-degree project management service covering people, systems, and solutions. So our services include process consulting, PMO services, product development, enterprise solution, and we do corporate trainings. So it's the journey of last 14 years. We have trained more than 12,000 professionals in the domain of project, program, and portfolio. So on the consulting space, we have served more than 50 different customers in deploying enterprise project management solutions using Microsoft and Oracle Primavera solutions. So we are partnered with PM for NGOs, which is an international NGO that promotes professionalism of project management between the development sectors and NGOs. So we also partnered with TPG Germany as a strategic partner, and we are also partnered with Intower USA for risk management and best practices. So going into the session, he's our speaker for today, Mr. Prem Kumar Devasahai MD. So talking about a quick introduction. So as his name suggests, so he's from South India and spent many years in Kolkata. He worked with Indian Railways in various capacities for over 20 years and became general manager at Indian Government Mint. He later served Hagai Institute for 20 years, and he traveled to over 80 different countries, developing the work of Hagai Institute as its executive director. He specializes in leadership, stewardship, and generosity. He has authored 3 books on leadership. He teaches and mentors many young people of diverse fields. Mr. P.K. Dilly defines the leader as the one who creates change for good of the led. So according to him, leaders lead people through love by empowering to become what God wants them to be. So thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. And we have a short note for all the participants. So the webinar is scheduled for 2 hours from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So for the first 90 minutes, it will be a presentation from the speaker, and there is a dedicated question and answer session. And in between, if you want to speak anything or ask anything to the speaker, you can give in chat, or you can use the icons what you find in the participants window. You can give a request or unmute yourself and speak. So this webinar carries 2 PDUs. This is for all the certificate holders. You can claim 2 PDUs under leadership series, and we will also give a certificate for all the participants. So after the session, you may have to submit a feedback about the entire program, wherein you will give your mail ID and your certificate will be sent to your ID separately. All right. So once again, we thank you for joining the session, and I'll hand over the session to Mr. PKD. Over to you, sir.
Okay, where am I?
You made him host?
Yes, sir. He can share. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes, good evening. I think somebody's mathematics is a bit weak. When you say half, should be 60 minutes presentation and 60 minutes question and answer. So anyway, let's see how it goes. Essentially, I'm an engineer by profession, government 20 years, railways and ministry, etc., and 20 years Hagai Institute. This is my email. I basically give my email in case people want to correspond with me and discuss certain issues with me. So the email is there and you can talk to us. Of course, you're probably primarily talking to Srinivasan and Proventures. But anyway, in case you want to do any chat with me, that's my email. And of course, if you want a PowerPoint and all, you can get that. Then, these are the 3 books on leadership: Leading Through Service, What Leaders Do, and Add to Your Faith Excellence, which are there. Now, feel free to ask any questions you may have at any time. Do not wait for the end of the session. Now, having said this, I know that they have muted you all, so I don't know how you're going to. You'll have to ask questions only on the chat.
They can also unmute themselves, sir.
They can unmute. So you
Yeah.
can always feel free to unmute and ask questions. Sometimes people like to wait till the end to ask questions, and that's why they had a Q&A at the ending. But what I've found, by the time you reach the end, you've forgotten the beginning. So you don't know all the questions which you had vanish. And then you are wondering uh, how we reached this end. So if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand and ask the question. The second thing I tell people, you do not have to agree with whatever I'm teaching. Okay. One of the things I've realized, all of us, every one of us, have been in leadership roles literally since birth. Either we had a younger sibling, or we have had younger children in school, or we have had within the family. In various situations, we have been giving leadership willy-nilly, whether we want to or not. And so we all have got our own ideas on leadership. And since we have our own ideas on leadership, you may not necessarily agree with the ideas which I have, which come more from a philosophical perspective. But we can always discuss it and dialogue on it. But what I really am trying to do is to make you think. And if I made you think, hopefully I've achieved my purpose, because the moment a person thinks, he's not the same again. That is a change which takes place. The change may not be making you more like me. In fact, you might decide to move away from me. But whatever I do, it makes a change. And that's really what we are after. Now, when you're looking at this whole issue of the source of leadership, what makes you a leader? Think of a person whom you did your best for. For whatever reason be, he was able to get you to commit yourself to the task and able to make you perform at a level above what you normally do. So he has been able to get the best out of you. Or if you never had the benefit of such an experience in your life, I really feel sorry for you. But think of a person whom you consider to be an outstanding leader. Now, I want you to list 3 things about him which you think made him so effective as a leader. Okay. So while you're doing that, think of 3 things, write it down on a piece of paper if you can. And let me see if I can get a whiteboard up and write down all your suggestions. Right. Okay, if you have written down some suggestions, can you share that with me? Unmute yourself and share it with me.
Hello, Ali. This is Vivek on the call. I have 3 words, which are the first one is inspiration.
Inspiration. Okay.
And the
Now,
second,
why did he? Okay. Second,
responsibility.
responsibility in the sense he was
As
a responsible person, or he gave you responsibility. What
responsible person, I mean.
Okay. Okay. Responsible. And the third one?
Is someone who leads from the front.
By example.
Like in terms of coaching or training, he'll be the first point of contact.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Koshi here.
Yeah.
One is person trusted me fully.
Okay.
And second is encouraged me all the time. Encouraged and supported.
Trusted me. Then you said
Encouraged and supported.
me. Okay, I need to encourage me.
And third one is he not only gave me responsibility, but delegated a lot of authority.
Okay, delegated authority. Right. Okay, anyone else?
Hello, Mr. Lee. This is Carl Ebenezer. I think it's believing in my ability.
Believing in your ability. Okay.
Yeah.
Believing in me. Let me put it.
Then
Yeah.
challenging me.
Challenging me.
I think some of the things which is said here, it's already said here, but I would say a role model.
Okay, role model. Okay, anyone else would like to contribute anything? Now, they're very interesting. Now, you have spoken of people who have challenged you and whom you responded to, and you responded to their leadership. And because you responded to their leadership, you did probably above average than you'd normally have done. Now, all these things that you mentioned, you've not mentioned anything in terms of you are an outstanding in his profession, that he had great knowledge, that he was some kind of a Superman. You not mentioned any of those things. Okay. I thought this is something when we think of a person who's a great leader, we automatically start thinking of a person like Superman who's got outstanding abilities. But when you actually come down to it, you find that leadership is not about having outstanding abilities, but it is being a kind of person who inspires others, who's responsible, who's a role model, who leads from the front, who trusts people, who encourages people, who delegates authority, who believes in people, and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that expertise is not required. Normally, if you ask this question, some people will say that he knew his field. So that is what it's, because when you are following a person, because he knows what he's doing, he knows his field, you learn from the whole process. So that is normally also there as one of the items which is normally done. And you could probably have a few others. But it's interesting that whenever you do this exercise, and you could do it with any group anywhere, you will find that you always get a long list on the left-hand side and a very short list on the right-hand side. Which brings me to my first point in leadership, that leadership is essentially not about being an outstanding person, but being a person who has got these characteristics on the left-hand side. So now, if you compare the two sides, I just put one item on the right-hand side and you have so many on the left-hand side. What can you give me one word which would define what the left-hand side items are? If you had to give a heading for this list, what would you call it?
Leadership attributes.
Okay. Attributes. Anyone else? So usually I use the term character. Attributes is fine depending on how we define attributes, because when I say attributes, I'm not necessarily meaning skills, but I'm meaning the kind of person he is. And so attributes is fine. And I used the term, as I said, character. And this side is what we would normally call skills. So leadership is normally a combination of these two, character and attributes on one side and skills on the other. Now, one of the things they tell people, everyone, there are now 30 people in this group. Yeah, 30 people in this group. Each one of you 30 have got some skill in something. So each person is gifted with some talent, some capability, some skills. So if leadership is basically a combination of skills and character and attributes, all of us should be leaders. It's not that some people are leaders and some people are not. All of us are leaders because we have the character of a leader and because we have a skill in some special field. So basically what this means that in your area of expertise, you are a leader. Not in all areas, just in your area of expertise, you are a leader. And that is the mistake a lot of people make. They think that if I'm the boss, I should give leadership all over. You don't. You would manage all over, but you give leadership in your area of expertise, which is essentially where you have the strength to make the suggestions. Now, the problem we find when you look at most organizations and most teams and how they function, you got people who are very well skilled, but nobody listens to them. Nobody pays attention to them, or nobody takes them seriously. Now, the question comes, why is it that people who have got the skills are not listened to? What do you think prevents people from listening to the person who has got the skill? Any suggestions?
Maybe the audience would feel like they're not connected to the person.
Right? They don't connect to the person. So it is all about relationships. Somehow the relationships are not good. And because the relationships are not good, however much of an expert he may be, nobody's listening to him. So you need to be what you call a people person. What else?
Attitudes, wrong attitudes, or not welcome attitudes and behavior.
Right. See, basically you're looking at the character. Like when I'm saying that he trusted me. So when he trusts me, a relationship starts building. He has confidence in me, so I begin to have confidence in him. He's a role model. He encourages me. So all this is what is building a relationship so that when you speak, you are listened to. Now, why I say this, a lot of people, especially engineers like me, who come from a technical background, they kind of think I'm the expert, people must listen to me. Believe me, nobody's going to listen to you. They listen to you because of the relationship which you have with them, not because you're an expert. And so now this character and these attributes, do I need a very high IQ to have this kind of character, the character of being responsible, the character of being a role model, the character of trusting others, the character of encouraging others, giving responsibility? Do I need a high IQ for all this?
No.
No, isn't it? So because I don't need a particularly high IQ to have this character, anyone, it doesn't matter who he is or she is, they can give leadership in their area of expertise. So I say that now supposing you got a person who's a janitor who's responsible for cleaning the premises or whatever it is. And if that person develops expertise in cleaning the premises, he can give leadership in that area. He can give suggestions. He can tell people this works, this doesn't work. He can tell his boss that you need to be doing it this way. And that is where the leadership comes. Basically, because you have expertise and because you have the character which makes people trust you. Now, how do I get this kind of a character? Where does it come from?
Values.
Yeah, so where do I acquire my values from? See, one thing is we acquired it from our upbringing, from our family, from the school we studied in, and things like that. All that is fine, but basically what I believe, ultimately you get this character or you get these attributes because of a decision you take to be that kind of a person. You take a decision to trust people. And believe me, people are highly untrustworthy. So to trust people, you need to take a positive, conscious decision that I'm going to trust people. That you take a decision that I'm going to be responsible. I'm not going to be irresponsible in the way I behave. I'm going to encourage. So it is a decision you take. So one of the things I tell people, you can attend 1,000 leadership courses. It's not going to help you. The person who makes you into a leader is you yourself. So attending the courses helps you get the ideas, but then ultimately, for you to become that leader, you need to make the decision to develop this kind of character. Because skills, everyone has. You have got your skills. They're already in place. Don't worry about it. What is not in place is the character and attributes. And so you need to take the decision to develop this character and attributes so that people can trust you and start building a relationship with you, and you can be an effective leader to them. Okay, any questions on this? No. Okay. So we did that exercise, we got some ideas. So basically, the way I put it, for me to develop leadership, the source of my leadership, where my leadership emanates from, is one, my character, the character of loving others, trusting others, encouraging others, being a role model, and those kind of things. And competence. You need to have competence in the area in which you're desiring to give leadership. So if you have been given a responsibility where you don't have that competence, acquire it. I'll give you a classic example. When I went on loan from the railways to the Indian Government Mint in Calcutta, the first day I entered into the office and I kind of settled in there, and two union leaders, a Congress union and a Communist union, walked in. And they told me, sir, you have come from the railways and you know nothing about the mint. So please don't destroy the mint. Whatever we tell you to do, you do. So now when such a challenge has been put to you, what do? They basically told me that I don't have the competence to give leadership, and so I should listen to them. If I tried to exercise my authority and tell them, how dare you speak like that to me, my whole leadership would have failed. What I did was, because it was in Calcutta and the National Library is in Calcutta, I went to the library, pulled out every book I could find on the manufacture of coins in India, manufacture coins in general. I also read a whole lot of books on the velocity of money and why money and what happens to money and how do you plan the manufacture of money and things like that. And after 6 months, I wrote a book on the history of coin making in India, which was published by the government of India. I got those days, I'm talking about 1985, when there were no computers and smartphones. I got myself a desktop computer, put all the formulas and everything into that so that any discussion comes up, in a few seconds I have the answers. And within 6 months, I knew more than the union leaders or anyone else in the factory for that matter on the basic understanding of how coins are manufactured. At the end of 9 months, the union leaders came and told me, "Sir, you are unique. We've not seen a person like you, but we still don't trust you. You are definitely up to something." I said, "Okay, we'll see." So over a period of time, under 3 months, they came back and they told me, literally on the first anniversary of my joining there, "Sir, you're absolutely a unique personality. We trust you completely. So whatever you want done in the mint, just tell us, we'll get it done for you." So that was a complete reversal of what they had said a year back. So what I tell people, my leadership began from that moment. Till then, I was only a manager, managing the affairs of a company or an organization, see that things get done. But actual leadership, when people are following you, began only after I gained that. And how did I gain that? Character and competence. So these are the two things which are required. And apart from these two, there's a third one, which I call communication. You may have knowledge and competence, but you can't communicate it. You might as well not have it. So we need to be good in communication, and we need to be able to understand other people so that we can communicate effectively to them. So if I have these 3 C's, as I call it, this becomes the source of the leadership which I exercise: my character, my competence, and my communication skills. And this gives you what I call charisma. You start having a charismatic personality and a reputation of a prophet. So a lot of people, see, this charisma is a very dangerous word. There are a lot of people who have some kind of a charismatic personality, and basically they use it to cheat people. So I am not talking about that kind of charisma. I'm talking about charisma which is coming from character, charisma which is coming from competence, and charisma which is coming from effective communication, not just communication. You see, cheats and others, they get a strong charisma because of the powerful communication, even though they have no character and competence. And that is really not what I'm advocating. What I'm advocating is develop your character, develop your competence in your area of responsibility, communicate effectively, and you will become a prophet in that organization. And people will listen to you when you speak. And that is essentially leadership. Leadership is when you speak, people listen to you and they kind of obey or carry out instructions which you are giving them. Okay. So now, what does a leader really do for the people? One is primarily he sets the direction for the team or for the organization, depending on where you are, at what level you are. If you're at the head for the organization, if you're mid-level, it's basically setting a direction for the team so that the team knows where they are meant to be going and motivating the people to go in that particular direction. So this is what I call leadership. Okay. Then the next is planning, coordinating and planning so that a team can function effectively is what I call management. So the two are rather different. Management is a skill, whereas leadership is not so much a skill as having the character of making people trust you. People trust you because of your character. People trust you because of your knowledge. So that is one thing very important in that, which I find Indians are not very good at, including me. When you don't know, don't talk. Because once for you to develop the reputation that if he has said it, it must be correct. I should only open my mouth when I know. So leadership is basically setting the vision and motivating the people because you know your subject, you know what is good, you know where the organization should be going, and you do all that. And management is the coordinating and planning to achieve the direction which you want to go. And that is why if you take any definition of leadership from any textbook or any book for that matter, you'll find that it generally includes these three. So I just taken this from the fundamentals of top management. Leadership is the principal dynamic force that motivates and coordinates organization in the accomplishment of the objectives. The objectives is setting the directions for the team. Motivating is encouraging the team to move in that direction. And coordinating is doing all the planning and organizing required so that you can get to the point where you want to be going. So that is the standard definition of leadership. But what I do normally in my books or in what I'm talking about leadership, I separate this motives and objectives as leadership and the coordinates as management. So I said, this is management and this is leadership. And I try to deal with them separately. Now, when you're saying setting the direction, where does the direction come from? So this is something which, again, I find a lot of controversy. Some people would argue that the direction comes from within you and from the dream you have or from what you want to achieve and various things. Personally, I reject that. The vision does not come from within you or from what you want to achieve or what is your dream for yourself. The vision essentially comes from the needs which are there around you. Now, supposing you're working in an organization. The organization has got certain goals, some vision, whatever it is. Now you can see that there are certain needs which have to be met for it to fulfill those objectives. Now that becomes my temporary vision of what I need to be doing. And so I'm looking at my team and I'm telling my team that, listen, these are the shortcomings we are seeing in in the organization. So let's see if we can fill the gap, achieve our goals, and also fill this gap, fill the needs which are there. So that what happens is the vision for my team becomes a bit wider than what is defined by the company. So the company or the organization will tell me this is the goal for your department. But I widen it. I widen the goal to meet the needs of the organization and the needs of the customers, needs of the clients, and not just fulfilling my responsibilities as defined by the organization. But the vision essentially is to meet the needs of the customer and client. That is primary. Because if I am not meeting the needs of the customer or the clients, I'm going to run out of business very soon. So that is essentially the way in which I need to be thinking. I should not be thinking in terms of what's convenient for me, what's convenient for my team, what's convenient for my organization. I need to be thinking what is the needs of the customer and the client, and what is the best way in meeting those needs. Now, the solution to the needs essentially comes from your perspective on the work, what I call the worldview, how you see things, and from knowledge which you have. The knowledge which you have enables you to start seeing solutions and to start understanding possible solutions to the needs which you are seeing. Second. Okay. Okay. So the better my knowledge and more effective my knowledge, then you'll find that you have very clear solutions to the problems that you're seeing in the organization or you're seeing for the clients, and you're able to deal with that problem which the client is having. And the solution also comes from the people. There's one of the things that I tell people, you are at a particular level in the organization, and you are looking at solutions from your level and your perspective and your ideas or whatever it is. But if you start listening to people lower down the ladder and up and higher up the ladder, you'll get a much wider perspective. So I said, don't start dreaming of solutions on your own, but try to create means where you are able to discuss and communicate with people, and you're able to understand a much broader perspective of what is the right solution. Because see, at each position in the ladder, you see just a small segment of the issue. You don't see the full problem. So you want to see the full problem, then you need to be talking to people. And that is where this communication becomes absolutely important if I really want to develop a vision for my department. Now, I know this vision for my department is a term which creates confusion in a lot of minds. Where people say the vision never changes. You got the organization, you got the organization vision. And I said, that's true. The vision of the organization does not change. But the vision of the organization needs to be translated into a vision for my department. Okay. So unless I have that vision for my department, and then there's a link between the vision of my department and the vision of the organization, you will find that the department never really gets motivated. So I give the example, like I said, okay, we're staying in a hostel. There are so many working men's hostels and PG hostels and I don't know what not. And they can have a vision statement of the kind of comforts they want to give you. But that vision statement may not make much sense to the watchman who's standing at the gate to protect the place. So he has to now see if I have to fulfill the vision of the organization, what is the vision I need to have? So I know that this is something which you will not find in textbooks or you'll not find people talking about. But I feel it is absolutely vital for me to translate the vision of the organization for my department and then be able to tell my department, this is what we are doing and this is where we are going. And then be able to motivate them and to get them to do things. And when you take that approach, you will find that you are creating history wherever you are, in whatever department you are, you tend to create history. Now, the other question is, whom do you give leadership to? Now, do you need authority over people to give them a vision? So what do you think? Any suggestions?
Well, yes and no. It usually doesn't require authority as long as we have good personal credibility. But if you have authority, we can institutionalize it.
Right. Now, when you don't have authority, what do you do?
We can influence somebody who's got authority, like boss's boss and so on.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So what happens? You don't have authority over people to give them a vision. You need to know what's the issues and you need to know what are the possible solutions. And you need to be able to share it with the person who has authority to institutionalize it. Okay, now don't worry about Naaman and the slave girl. This is what I call having the reputation of a prophet. When a prophet, if you look in a basic understanding of a prophet, there are some people like priests and others who hold a position. A prophet is a person who does not hold a position. He's somebody from outside the organization or within the organization who does not really have the position, but when he speaks, people listen because they know that what he's talking is sense. So that is what really needs to happen to you. You need to become an influencer and where you are being listened to by the people above you. There was a book by D. Hawk. D. Hawk wrote a book called The Birth of the Chaotic Age. It's worth reading. In fact, I found it a fascinating book. And by the way, for those who don't know who D. Hawk is, he's the inventor of the Visa card. He's the one who designed and created the Visa credit card. And there's a very interesting statement D. Hawk makes. He said, people should not know you. You should be hidden. People should know your product. And he lived that. He believed in that and he lived that. He never promoted himself, never projected himself. He remained in the background, but what he produced became a masterpiece. Anyway, what he said was that the first person you give leadership to is to those above you. But before you give leadership to those above you, you need to give leadership to yourself. You need to be knowing where you're going, and you need to be absolutely clear that this is where we are going. And then once you know where you're going and where you need to be going, then you talk to the people above you and convince them to be going in that direction so that you give leadership to those above you. And after giving leadership to those above you, you then give leadership to those below you. Okay. So this is a mistake I find a lot of people make, even in India. that they are waiting for the person above them to tell them what to do. Now, believe me, the person above you does not have a full picture. He has a full picture from his level. He doesn't have a full picture from the ground level. So the decisions he takes very often misses things at the ground level. So you are the one who's at the ground level, and you need to be interacting with your boss, listening to him, getting his perspective, and then giving him the leadership on what needs to be done. Because you're the one who knows all the facts and you have all the data. So I keep telling people, please don't wait for your boss to tell you what to do. You tell him first. Preempt him all the time, because you are the one who knows. And if you are talking sense, and people find out that you are talking things which you know, slowly your reputation as a prophet will be established. You will be able to give leadership to those above you with greater ease. So it takes time for you to establish that reputation. And I would say that within 2 to 3 years of you being in an organization, that reputation should have been established. That here is the person who knows what he's talking about or what she's talking about. And people on top of you are willing to listen to you, and because you have that reputation of a prophet. But don't forget, not only you give leadership to those above you, you also give leadership to those below you. So please don't forget them. Don't get so busy with the bosses that you forget the people. But you have to get the work done through the people. So that is another point which I make, that leadership is all about people. It is not so much running an organization, which is management. And it is not so much on running an organization as relating with people and focusing and developing my leadership with people and caring for people. Now, this is something I find that most people find leading people difficult. It's much easier to lead an organization because an organization is inanimate. An inanimate thing, I can just push buttons and I can read it. I can plan and make a schedule, and it can be all very idealistic and run it. But moment it comes to leading people and focusing on people, you find that people are inanimate, emotional beings who are very inconsistent. So they kind of create havoc wherever they are. So people try to withdraw from the leading people into leading organizations. So they will quote rules and they will build rules and try to enforce rules and things like that. And I tell them that's not leadership. So don't confuse leadership and management. Management is all about enforcing rules and things like that. Leadership is all about motivating people and building a relationship with people so that the people trust you and they're willing to work with you. So that is something which we need to be absolutely clear about. Now the leaders meets the needs of the people. See, whom are the people that I'm leading? I'll be looking at this a little bit later again. But it's not just the clients whom the leader has to deal with or meet the needs of, but he also needs to meet the needs of his team members. And he needs to see that all his team members, all their requirements are met. But that is leadership. Unfortunately, I don't know how it is in corporates, but I know in corporates you have what they call an HR department. And the HR department is supposed to look after the welfare of the people. So what happens in many executives, they kind of don't get involved. They say that's the HR problem, not my problem, you deal with HR. And I knew that was a major problem where I was working in the government, in the railways. The technical people who tell the staff, whatever problems you have, go and deal with HR, don't come here. I'm here to deal with technical things. Now the thing is, when the staff go to HR, nobody listens to them. They're treated very shabbily. Whereas if I, as a team leader or at the mid-level management man in the organization goes to the HR, people listen to me. And so I can get things done much faster and much more easily than the poor staff can get done by going to HR. So I made it very clear to my staff, you come and meet me. You have a problem, come and meet me, I'll deal with it. And literally, I just spend 10 to 15% of my daily time in HR, sorting out the problems of my staff. Because see, when the staff know that you are looking after them, then they look after you. And they have to get more and more committed to you. So this is where I said you are building up a relationship. You are focusing on relating with people and meeting the needs of the people. Managers run after numbers, systems, and things like that, and they tend to forget people. But remember, your team members are human beings, and human beings have got emotions, and they need to understand that you are concerned about them as a person and not just concerned about your goals and targets and achievements and awards or I do not know what not. In fact, I never bothered about awards. I said they're irrelevant. So this finishes the first part of my presentation. Then I'll go to the second part. These are some collected from a book called Handbook of Leadership. So what are the definitive traits of leaders? One is a leader, the person with high energy and passion. So in this sense, I find a lot of people are very weak and they don't seem to have energy. So I tell people that you want to be effective in leadership, please maintain your health. You need to be high energy people and people who are passionate about what they're doing. The second definitive trait which I talk about is being extroverts and dominants. But this is something which we have found that while extroverts and dominants tend to be more self-confident and therefore tend to be leaders, introverts are in the long run turn to be better leaders than extroverts. Because introverts take more time to be pushed into leadership because they don't push themselves forwards. But over a period of time, people recognize that they make better leaders and because they don't do things in a hurry. Then the ability and willingness to communicate. You need to be a person who wants to communicate with the people, not giving orders and commanding people, but talking to people, explaining to people, discussing with people. This needs the definitive trait of leaders. Then dependable. Somebody said responsibility, responsible. You take your responsibility seriously. And so people can depend on you. Perseverance, you can stay with it. You don't give up easily. Delayed gratification by Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman's book is a must. I feel everyone should read it. Emotional intelligence, as he calls it. And basically what he was saying, that those who are not wanting to grab benefits for themselves immediately, but are willing to wait, they are the ones who normally have good emotional intelligence. They relate well with people. And it is the ability to relate with people which actually gives you success in leadership. Is motivated by self-actualization. Those motivated by self-actualization were better than those motivated by self-achievement. So self-actualization and self-achievement are very similar, but one is trying to achieve with a kind of I have achieved. But self-actualization is kind of fulfilling the dream which is there and being vision-driven rather than self-driven. So though motivated by self-achievement is easier and was more common among successful leaders, but those who are motivated by the dream and by the good of the masses, they are the people who achieve greater things in life. And know yourself. People who underestimate themselves are generally found to be better leaders than those who overestimate. If you overestimate yourself, you tend to take unnecessary risks and land yourself in difficulties. Then intelligence was one of the characteristics, and high task competence at lower levels and high creative competence at higher levels of management, and intuition and pragmatism. I don't know how you can define intuition, but what I have found, those who want to get all the data before they take a decision ultimately lose out because you are spending so much on time trying to collect all the data. So collect as much data as you can, but intuitively you should be able to sense what the solution is and where you need to be going. So I look at intuition as basically the ability to see the nonverbal signals and to see the things which are, read between the lines and things like that. So good leaders have the ability to be intuitive. They have good insight and they're keenly aware of the surroundings. They know what is happening. In fact, one of the things that I was telling somebody, that you need to be aware of the power structure in your organization. Now, I know that I annoyed somebody at least with that, because when I said you need to know the power structure, they said, why should I know the power structure? There is a line of control and there is a organizational chart given. I will follow that. I said, yes, but unfortunately, the person in that organizational chart whom you are going to ask, he is powerless. He is powerless because of the kind of personality he has and the kind of character he has. So I said, if I want to get something done, I'm going to bypass him. So these are things which we need to be aware of how we can achieve what we are trying to do. The last item was failure of information overload. That means when the leader knows very much more than the team members, his leadership tends to fail because the team members can't understand where he's going. So we need to come down consciously to the level of the team members so that they can understand us and follow us. Now, this is some of the characteristics which the Handbook on Leadership, which is a beautiful book on leadership, gives. But I'm wanting to look at some things which are more practical for all of us. Primarily, I said leadership is all about people. People, I'm using the term flocks of sheep, but try and identify who are the people you're responsible for and how can I best give leadership to them in terms of solving the problem. See, I think leadership is identifying the needs and then finding a solution to those needs. So if I'm going to look at leadership, not so much in having all those traits which the Handbook on Leadership gave, but I'm going to look upon leadership as effectively giving leadership to my people. I said I need to know what their needs are, and I need to figure out what the solutions to those needs are. So one thing, exercise I give people, I ask them to do, make a list of all the flocks of people which you have in different parts of your responsibilities or of your life or whatever it is. So you may have in the work spot itself, you may have 2 or 3 different groups of people whom you are trying to give leadership to. You may be giving leadership to clients. You may be giving leadership to your staff. You may be giving leadership to your bosses. You may be giving leadership to some other departments whom you link with. So map that out. And having mapped that out, I then am trying to identify what are the needs and where these departments or these groups of people are struggling with. And then try and see whether I can be a help to them and help them get past the difficulties which they are facing so that they can function more effectively and can achieve the goals which are there. So don't worry about that. Yeah, this is what I need to be clear in my mind who the flock is. So don't go with hazy ideas. Try and be as crystal clear as you can on whom are the people that you're giving leadership to and whom you need to be impacting. It's interesting that Ortega y Gasset was a Spanish philosopher. He makes a statement that those who are wanting to serve are the true leaders in society, and those who are wanting to be served are basically the parasites who are eating off society. So he says, what is the attitude which you have? Are you having an attitude of serving, or are you having an attitude of being served? And Butler put it in a different way. He says, you assume responsibility for the present situation, even if it's not your responsibility, you assume responsibility for it and find solutions. So you don't blame others, but you're finding solutions to the needs which you are seeing, which are there, where you are there to serve, not to be served. So what attitude do we have? I can give you a simple test. A simple test I give people is, look back over the last 1 week or 10 days or whatever it is, and look at the things you grumbled about or you complained about. Now, when do we grumble? We grumble or complain when we are wanting to be served and a person doesn't serve us, then we complain. So all complaining essentially comes, or grumbling essentially, I make a distinction between grumbling and complaining, but all grumbling comes essentially from wanting to be served. So if a person is continuously grumbling about everything and whatever situations are there around him, essentially he's not a leader, he's more of a parasite. And if you find that you are also part of the grumbling gang, you need to take control of yourself and say, I'm not going to grumble. I'm going to start trying to find solutions to these things I'm grumbling about. And I'm not going to blame others, but I'm going to assume responsibility for the situations we find ourselves in. So that is the kind of character which makes you into a leader. Now, all the traits which the Handbook on Leadership gave is all useful and nice, but believe me, these are the real essence of what creates a leader within you. So Plato was another guy, he made an interesting statement. He said that those who are motivated by material benefits and gain, they are unfit to be leaders. They are essentially only fit to be slaves because they can be bought and sold. Unfortunately, if you look at the world today, much of it is bought and sold by money. So they really have no commitment. And these people are not really leaders, but they are parasites. And we are having to work with them. All I'm trying to say is make sure that you don't join that gang of parasites, but you are a leader who's not there for money, but is there to make an impact on behalf of the people, to serve the people, and to do good for the people. The other thing Plato said was there are some people who are not motivated by money, but they are motivated by position, status, to get honor, to achieve awards and things like that. And he said, please don't make such people leaders. They're unfit to be leaders. Make them soldiers in the army and let them become heroes. But political leadership should not be with them. Either the political leadership needs to be with the lovers of wisdom. Wisdom, the person who's a lover of wisdom, he's able to see and understand what are the needs of the society around him and is working to find solutions to these needs. And that is why he becomes the true leader who is a benefit and a blessing to the people around him. So we need to see that we become that kind of a person who's not motivated by money or by status or by fame, but who's motivated by bringing about change for the good of the people. So I define a leader as the individual who achieves a change in society, usually for his betterment. So achieving a change may or may not involve people following you. So sometimes in a situation where people don't know you or have not yet accepted you, like Carl said, you may not be able to achieve a change directly, but if you're able to influence the leader, you will achieve the change. And if you're able to, when I say leader, you're able to influence the person who has the authority, then you'll be able to achieve the change. And you've done a good for society and a blessing for the organization. So that is basically who a leader is. A person who is able to achieve changes because of the influence which he has. One more thing which Peter of course wrote a particular book in the Bible, and in his passage where he was talking about leaders, he said, let not your leadership be as some kind of a king over people. It's not what Toynbee, Arnold Toynbee called them the dominant majority and a dominant minority. That don't be that kind of a dominant role, where these people ultimately do more harm than good. But rather, we need to be examples. That's the word that Peter uses. A lot of you used that when I did that exercise on why he was effective as a leader. You used the term role model, and he was an example and things like that. He led from the front. So this is something which is absolutely real. So I'll give you some simple examples. For instance, I found a lot of people pressurize their children that they need to come first in class and things like that, and that you need to study well, etc. And I asked the parents, I said, you are telling the children to study, do you study? They said, brother, when we were in school and college, we studied. I said, when you were in school and college, your children are not born to see your example. Do you study now? Then he said, why should I study? What is there to study? See, today we are living in a knowledge era where there's an explosion of knowledge. And if you are not studying and increasing your knowledge in your area of responsibility, you are a liability to your organization. And if you are not studying, how do you expect your children to study? They need to see your example. They need to be following you. But I also use this example. I don't know whether it's a fair example. But see, when the maid comes in the morning, say at 6 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever it is, she has got up at 5. She has probably prepared breakfast for her family. And then she has left her home by probably 10 to 6 to reach her house by 6 or 6:15 or whatever it is. And she rings the bell, and then she sees that you're just climbing out of bed and coming to open the door for her. I said, what is your example? You are wanting to tell her you need to work hard, you need to come on time. But what is the example you're setting? So we need to be careful of the example we are setting for people. Because most people are totally unaware of the negative examples they are setting and then wondering why people are not following them. So people will follow you when you're the role model. Now, I don't expect you to do the work with the staff are supposed to do, but I expect you to show the example of being hardworking. Let me give an example. What I found in the mint in Calcutta was very interesting. The factory was supposed to start at 9. So I found that around 9 o'clock, the workers will start coming in. And by the time it's 9:30, the workers would have fully come in. And the supervisors would have started coming in at around 9:30. Around 10 o'clock, the officers will start rolling in. And the general manager is expected to roll in around 10:30 or 11. So I watched this all going on for about a month or two. Then by the time a month or two, I started establishing some kind of a reputation. I waited till my reputation was reasonably established. Then I started standing at the gate and welcoming the people as they came in at 9 a.m. And see, some people are embarrassed because they're coming so late and they're wondering. And my unions came and asked me, sir, what are you doing? He said, no, I just want to talk to the people. And I want to give them the instructions for the day. So I'm standing at a door, and as they come, I'm greeting them. But slowly the message got across, and the people, the supervisors and officers started coming on time. Now, the point I want to make is, if you try to do this exercise without having got the loyalty and credibility of the people, it will not work. They will just say, let that idiot come at 9, why should we come at 9? Okay. But moment you have established your credibility and your leadership, then you can do these kind of things, which will motivate people to be an example to be followed. They will not follow you. So this is something which leadership books talk about and which you need to take seriously. So there are what we call 3 basic leadership styles. One is transactional. Transactional basically means I give you something, you give me something. In transactional, the problem really is the vision of the people is not your vision. So the people have a vision that they will get a salary on the 1st of next month or the last day of this month. Your vision is that the work will get done or some work will be achieved. So the two are different. So that means the level of commitment which is there in a transactional leadership is less than ideal. It's not what it should be. But the people are not doing it for the vision. They're not doing it because they believe in the dream. They're doing it because they want some side benefit. And transactional leadership is very limited, because what happens once the transaction is over, the leadership ends. So you'll find that transactional leadership achieves very little. The second kind of leadership is what we call charismatic. See, people follow you because they see you as some kind of a charismatic figure. But here, they have not necessarily seen the vision. And because they have not seen the vision, if you leave, the vision dies. So the ideal is what we call inspirational leadership, where the people are following you because they have the same vision as you have and the same dream as you have, then even if you leave, you will find that the leadership which you set up, the directions which you set up, the vision which you set up will continue even beyond you and is not dependent on you alone. So that is something which I liked actually, written in a book called Rebel Leadership by Downton. Now, the last point I wanted to touch, be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud. What is humility? And that is a very difficult word to define. And I have struggled to try and find a passive kind of sentence which can effectively define humility properly. But I like the definition given by Paul in the Bible. He said, in humility of mind, regard the other person as better than yourself. So he said, in humility, I regard the other person better than myself. But then I said that is a contradiction, or that is absurd, because if I'm coming first in class and the other person is coming last in class, how do I consider him better than myself? It doesn't make sense. And I pondered over that whole idea, and I came up with this idea that everyone is better somewhere. That means each person has got his field of expertise and area of expertise. So I may be better in one particular area, but he is going to be better in another area. So basically, humility becomes the ability to see the strengths of others. Now, ultimately, if I have to build a team, I must be able to see the strengths of people so that I can build a team on their strengths and not just putting people together saying, I remember one of my bosses, he said, nobody is indispensable, everyone is the same. I said, everyone is not the same, they're all different. And so people do become indispensable to the team till you have a replacement. So I need to be able to see the strengths of the people so that I can build an effective team and be an effective leader to them. Now, what is it that prevents me from seeing the strengths of people? And that is something which we struggle with. Now, one of the things which I read somewhere and which I believe is true, that pride essentially comes from a poor self-esteem. That means when you are not confident of yourself, when you don't have a sound self-esteem, when you meet somebody else who is very capable and competent, you feel hurt. I mean, you feel pain. You feel pain because you are not like him and you want to copy him. So what happens? Your brain plays a trick on you. Your brain plays a trick on you and prevents you from seeing what is good in other people so that you don't feel pain. So essentially, what happens that when you have poor self-esteem, it results in two things. Either you withdraw or you project yourself and you appear proud, but actually you're weak. You're feeling inferior. So how do I deal with this? Now, one of the things is that damage has been done to us basically by our superiors in the times past. That is, parents and teachers have been comparing us with others and putting us down. And because of that, we have all got various degrees of hurts within us, which prevents us from accepting others and prevents us from accepting the strengths of others. So one of the things I tell people, see, what the Bible tells us is very interesting. It says that each person has been individually crafted by God for a particular purpose. So God has made me, God has made Koshi Varghese, and we are different because God crafted Koshi Varghese for a particular purpose, and God crafted me for a particular purpose. So we are different. So I don't need to be like Koshi Varghese, and Koshi Varghese doesn't have to be like me. So I need to learn to accept Koshi Varghese as he is because that is how God has made him. And if he has the weaknesses and the failures, I need to be encouraging him and building him so that he can get past those, and vice versa. So by getting a right understanding of myself, that I'm not here to be an expert in all areas, or I'm not here to kind of achieve all things, but I'm here to fulfill the role which has been given me. And the role is given to me by my context. So if I'm working for this particular company, that company becomes my context, and that company gives me my role, and I fulfill that. I don't have to fulfill anyone else's role. And so I need to learn to accept myself. And if we are not able to accept ourselves, we probably need to do some counseling or go to some counselor who will enable us to get past this, because this is the biggest hindrance for leadership. In fact, there is one more leadership program called Lead Like Jesus, which deals only with this. It says that the whole problem of leadership is this lack of self-esteem, which results in creating problems for everyone. So I need to be able to deal with my self-esteem and sort it out and recognize that I am a unique creation created by God, and I need to fulfill that creative purpose and not worry about competing with others unnecessarily. And once I have accepted myself, then I can accept others. And see, as I told you in the beginning when we started, leadership is all about having strong relationships with the team members and build relationships with people. So when I have good self-esteem, I can relate well with people. And so my leadership becomes effective, and I become effective in building people up. So that is something which we need to deal with and try and develop that kind of humility where we don't have to keep pushing ourselves forward. We just do what is required for us, and then people will accept us. Okay. So that is what I wanted to present for today. It's taken a little over an hour. And now we can, any questions or any comments?
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session. So now the forum is open for question and answer. So you can give your questions either in the chat or you can unmute yourself and speak. So Lisa, again, thank you for the session. It was very insightful and thought-provoking. So for many of us, leadership qualities means far-fetched, and it sounds complex. So, but the input and the points what you have given, so at least it has given us the motivation that we all could practice it in our day-to-day life. So it was really a wonderful session, and I'm sure our participants will have more to share. So yes, so if any of you wants to have any questions or any clarification, the forum is open, and we would like to inform that there is a feedback given in the link, chat feedback link. So please give your feedback about the session in the link, and the certificate for this session will be sent to your ID as you have given in the feedback form. All right, any questions or anyone wants to share anything about the session? Anything you would like to?
You can also share your experience and challenges that you faced, okay, in your leadership role, which will actually help Uncle to understand, and then share how you can be helped through that. So not necessarily a question, you can share any of your challenges. Yeah.
I've restricted myself purely to the source of leadership. A lot of these challenges you're talking about comes under team building and effective motivation of the team and things like that, which I didn't go into because I was just restricting myself to this basic concept of where leadership comes from and how we build that. Now, I found the same thing, basically, right from my college days, I was an alcoholic. So I did not have that kind of technical expertise when I came into a working career. But so when my people used to ask me all kinds of questions, I tell them honestly, I don't know. I don't know, you teach me. So I sat down and learned from my staff. And what I found, the staff did not lose respect for me because I said I don't know. But they appreciated it and they were willing to share with me what they knew. And that enabled me also to build a relationship with them. Okay. But as I said, ultimately your leadership comes because they feel that you know what you're talking about. And when you have got what you are talking about from them, they have got a lot more confidence in you. So we need to be willing to take time to talk to people. So one of the things, like when I was working in the railways, and I was in charge of the local drivers were part of my staff. So whenever I travel on the train, I would travel on the locomotive to get some feedback and interaction with the drivers and build a relationship with them. So that the officer is not some far off distant figure sitting in an air-conditioned office, but he's a person he has spoken to, whom he has known, he have had tea together or had a meal together. So that is where the whole essence of leadership comes from. See, people make the mistake of thinking that authority and power is where my leadership comes from. It doesn't. And believe me, when you're leading a large organization, if you think authority and power is going to work, it's not going to work. People are going to reject. So you have to spend time in being willing to talk to people and discuss. Actually, I had a boss when I was in Secunderabad long time back called SM Bhargav. So one thing he taught me was how to dialogue with the staff and keep discussing issues with them rather than taking unilateral discussions. And the predecessor was the person who would only take unilateral discussions and never discuss with the staff. So I compared the two styles, and I definitely found SM Bhargav's style was far more effective. And he was able to achieve a lot more actual changes in the factory and in the plant for the good of the organization than the predecessor. So I adopted that style and I found it to be very, very effective in that sense in being able to build the relationships. The second thing I did for building relationships was essentially looking after them, seeing that their needs are met, which should be met, and all their concerns are looked after. Like what happens, especially when you're working in the government, there's a whole lot of corruption is involved. So even for a person to get the payments due to him, they will ask for a commission or they'll ask for a cut and things like that. So that is where if you can always say that that's none of my business. I'm only here as a technical in charge. But that's is not going to get you into a leadership position. You want to get into a leadership position, you need to get involved with their problems, their difficulties, and treat them as human beings. And then you will find that you can create a team. See, I've always worked in large organizations. So working in large organizations, that means my total staff would be normally 3,000 to 5,000 people. And one thing I've been able to see that I've been able to get the loyalty so that they perform as a team and they fulfill what all you need to do. Let me give one illustration. I did a surprise inspection in Cochin Yard. And so I went there around midnight. And as fate would have it, when I reached there, it started raining cats and dogs like it can only rain in Cochin. And the power went out. Power went out, so it was pitch dark, and it was raining cats and dogs. I got out of the Jeep and charged across to the small room in which the train examiners are supposed to be there. And I found it totally vacant. And I thought, where have these people vanished? And I had, of course, a lot of negative ideas, thinking that they have disappeared somewhere. But then when I came out of the room, I saw one person in the distance. So I asked him, where is everyone? And he told me that they have all examining one train. I said, in this darkness and in this rain, how are they examining a train? He said, no, sir, they're examining. I said, show me. So we went. I went and I could see in the distance with hand lamps that they are examining the train and seeing, clearing it for being moved out of the yard. So I went to the team leader and I asked him, I said, Suresh, what are you doing? In this darkness, if you try to examine a train, you're likely to get run over. I said, are you crazy? So he told me, no, sir. 3 months back on Anaklam platform, you made a statement to the operating department that no train will be detained for more than 2 hours or 3 hours at the Cochin Yard. So I'm making sure that your words do not fall to the ground. So that's the kind of loyalty which you can build by sharing and discussing with them. And that is leadership. See, leadership is basically getting the loyalty of the people, not achieving. Achieving is management. You can achieve a lot of things without having an inch of leadership in you. But leadership is when people are willing to do for you far more than they are required to do. And that is the kind of commitment which you can get. And in fact, finally, when I left Trivandrum Division, the train was going up from Trivandrum to Shoranur, and we had people crying, literally crying on the platforms, saying that the one man who gave us justice and cared for us is leaving. Now, my point is, if you can do that with a team of around 3,000 people, how much more should we be able to do it with smaller teams today in the corporate world, where we have a team size of 10, 12, 15, 30? We should be able to build this kind of loyalty. But that is leadership. See, I can talk about team building and other issues, which some of the people have asked me to talk about. I don't want to get diverted. I want to just look at how do I get influence over people so that they listen to me. But that is ultimately leadership.
Thank you so much, sir. So you are the kind of role model to all of us in terms of demonstrating the leadership style. So anyone wants to share anything?
Good. If there are no questions, we can wind up.
Sir, I want to share, echo one sentiment. Maybe many of my colleagues also. So typically, companies, especially in the IT space, they are being continually assessed for their contribution or outcome, whatever it is. So when I was there in 10 years in IT industry, every 6 months, okay, they'll say that, yeah, it's nice, you're a people person, but you lack assertiveness. We are not getting the required output out of your team. Okay, so this is the kind of feedback managers give, and that actually reduces the spirit of the team members or others. So this layer by layer, this is the same kind of expectation coming up from the organization. So how it's the same for everyone. A team member gets it from a team lead gets it from the project manager. So how do they face this situation and continue to grow?
Frankly, my whole situation was a bit different. I was not known as a reasonable boss, okay? I was known as the person who will solve the problems of my staff, that I'm committed to my staff and I'll solve the problems. But I was seen also as a totally unreasonable boss who expects far more than a person should. So in fact, I got a feedback from one of my favorite staffs, and he told me, he said, sir, you're the most unreasonable boss I've ever seen. But I never enjoyed working for a person more than I've enjoyed working for you. So that is, one other thing, nobody can ever say that I'm soft on my staff. And in fact, in the railways, I removed probably more staff from service than most other officers because I would not tolerate indiscipline and nonsense. I said, I am creating an atmosphere where you can work and where you can deliver. But if you don't want to work, don't expect me to be particularly patient with you. And the thing is, now working in an organization like the railways, where you got these strong unions, both the Congress Union and the Communist Union and all, the unions backed me to the hilt in all these confrontations with bad workers and people who won't deliver. Where they said, so we agree with you that you are a person who, in fact, the union leaders used to tell me, you're the best union leader we ever had, but you have done more for the staff than we could ever get done. But we do not tolerate nonsense. So because of that mix of maintaining the pressure at work as well as looking after the needs. So I'm looking after their needs, but I'm not cajoling them. Now, I know this can be very, very difficult, and it can take you into all kinds of very, very difficult situations. And I have seen that. I have seen people commit suicide because they're disciplined and all those kind of things. But we need to be able to maintain both. We need to maintain a strict discipline along with looking after all the needs that they have, but not being soft on them. So I don't think my management has ever told me that I'm soft. Okay, so we push them and we achieve what we need to achieve. But I'm not that way goal-oriented, I'm more vision-oriented. So I don't worry. See, in fact, that was the big issue I had in Haga Institute. But they would set goals and then want you to fulfill those goals. I said, listen, I have set these goals, but I don't expect the goals all to be fulfilled. Because I expect others to fulfill the goals, and those are the goals I've set them. They said, no, we want you to give me a realistic figure. And I said, all that doesn't work with me. But I'm not goal-driven or goal-oriented. I'm basically vision-driven and vision-oriented. And I can tell you that when dealing with my staff, I didn't chase them so much on goals that have you achieved your targets and things like that. But I chased them more on a vision. Are we a blessing? Is the other departments talking about us? Are we meeting the needs of the sales department? Are we meeting that is what we need to be doing. Because what happens, I can fulfill all my goals, but I would not fulfill the pain of my other departments. Let me give an example. There is a certain amount of time given for maintenance of a train or a rake. We call it a rake, a set of coaches. When it comes from a trip, there's a certain amount of time given for its maintenance. Now, I know that some officers in the mechanical department would insist that full time be given. We will not, our staff should not be asked to take shortcuts, and we will not give the rake before the allotted time. But for me, I think, listen, if I give the rake late, then the customers will suffer, the passengers will suffer, the operating department will find it difficult, every department will struggle, the catering department will find everything is going off. So why don't we put in the extra effort and turn the rake around? Now, immediately when you say that, the staff will say, no, sir, we turned the rake around fast today, then every day they will send the rake late and ask us to turn it around. I said, listen, why do you come with a negative attitude? We are a team member and we are talking to each other, and we'll see that that doesn't happen. But we need to have this kind of positive attitude towards the other departments, because we are here to solve their problems. Now, if I'm going strictly by goals and achievement, I'll say, no, my goal is to take 8 hours to do the rake. I've done my 8 hours, I fulfilled my goals. So in fact, I found this very interesting thing in the railways, that each division used to have a goal that the train should not lose more than 5 minutes in that division. So each division will lose 5 minutes. And by the time the train goes from Chennai to Delhi, it'll be 1 hour late. And nobody to blame, because everyone said we lost only 5 minutes. I said, see, we need to be thinking the train has come to me 5 minutes late. I need to make sure it goes on time or maximum 5 minutes late. I cannot take the 5 minutes late grace I've been given to me. So this is the problem of goals. When you send them a goal that you should not lose more than 5 minutes, the train is 1 hour late and everyone says, we have fulfilled our goals. So that is, I feel, one of the big problems today, even in corporates, that they tend to be goal-driven rather than vision-driven. And when you are goal-driven, you will find that very often the goals are achieved, but none of the needs of the customers, none of the needs of the other client departments, none of the needs are met. And everyone is frustrated and angry. So that is why I said that a leader is a person who is driven by the vision, not so much by goals and things like that. Where he's not looking at the betterment of his career. He's looking at meeting the needs which are there around him. I don't know, Koshi, if you'd like to add anything on that, because you also have a lot of experience in that area.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was also thinking of some example that I had to go through. I used to work for Union Carbide those days. And I used to work in Chennai in a battery manufacturing plant. And suddenly I was called and told that I am being transferred to Vizag, where they were catching shrimps, processing and exporting all of them. I asked the boss, what is this? I'm used to working with men and machines, and suddenly you are sending me somewhere where women and shrimps are there. I don't know anything about this. Why are you sending me there? So they said, we have a problem there that the workmen and the union are up against the management, and they have sent a complaint to the chief minister saying that these are American stooges. They are doing all wrong practices, and also they are passing on a lot of information about India and so on, because the trawlers go into the deep sea, and from there they are passing on information and all kinds of things. So we were under notice about many things, and I was asked to go and sort it out. You go there, you enter into different kinds of problems, actually. Anyway, about leadership, I'll bring that first and then probably touch on another problem also. I go there and take over from a person who is an absolute expert on shrimp technology. He came from Canada, very good, extremely well versed with everything. I know nothing about biology, zoology, botany, nothing. Never did I learn any of those things. But I'm supposed to do this. When I went there, the basic problem I saw was the people. If I call the union for a meeting, they will just come, sit down in front of you, and will never open their mouth. They won't even look at you. They will just keep their heads down, looking down all the time. Because I'm the manager, they come and listen to me and they go back, but no interaction. Probably that was there existing. And it took me a long time to get them to listen to me and to say that I am not just a management person, I am the representative for you here. And let's do something together and let's make this place a better place for everybody. What you said is true, and that is, it was a question of trust. There was absolutely no trust, actually. They thought that these people have come there only to exploit us and get the best out of us. And I think even management did that. It's not that, unlike the rest of the Union Carbide, here the culture was so totally different. It was absolute hire and fire anybody that you want. And this being a seasonal business, you will be surprised. Management had something like 36 people on their permanent roles and about 500 and odd people on their temporary roles. And they will fire anybody, hire anybody. That was the system. So I sat with them, I talked to them, tried to bring in some system like last in, first out kind of thing, so that the senior of the temporary people will get a longer service. That was the first thing. Second thing, I tried to see whether I can make more people permanent and reduce the floating population. That is, so I made something like finally about 80 or 81 people permanent, and the floating population came down to something like 200. So it became a little more manageable. Then I introduced this last in, first out kind of principle. So they felt that, okay, somebody is looking into some of our issues. Then I found that there was a beautiful canteen building, but there was no canteen being operated because they said there is the division is making loss, and until we make the profit, we will not spend any more money. So I talked to my personnel manager and I told him that, can we do something? Can we get some contractor to come and give everything on a cost basis so that these people will get some hot food? And the problem was that the shift used to start at 7 o'clock. Most of them are girls, young girls, unmarried girls. They come from the city. They were from kind of middle class background because we wanted people. The whole processing plant was like an operating theater. The neatness was absolutely essential, and cleanliness was one of the highest priority. So we needed to get good people, and they came. But then the problem was that to come from the city to here using a line bus, they would start from home at 5:30 to come here at 7. How can they bring lunch or breakfast? Nothing. They used to bring something, maybe prepared the previous day and so on. So I went to my boss and said that, can I operate this on a no-cost basis to the management? And he was completely non-people person, and he just ruled it out straight away. Sorry, I will not allow. Then the union will come with reduced rates. I cannot allow any of this. Sorry, I will not do it. I was convinced that I had to do something for them. So finally, I did what you suggested, Brother Lee. And that is, I looked at the power politics there, who were just what and so on. And I found that there were differences between the general managers and the vice president or the director of the division. So I told him, sir, with your permission, can I go to the director and seek his permission to run this place? He was very angry with me. You can go, but I will veto it, is what he said. But since he said you can go, I already had a reasonably good understanding with the director. So I went to the director and said, sir, I understand that we cannot run this because management will not give any more money on this thing as long as we are not making profit. Allow me to run this at a no profit, no cost basis. And then this will be helpful for me to sort out our problems. He said, are you sure of what you're saying? I said, yes, sir, I'm sure. I can build the relationship. So he allowed me. I came back. My boss was very angry with me, but I started running the canteen. And people were so happy. They used to get idli vada or something like that, hot things for breakfast. They were prepared to pay the money that was required. But they got hot food. Then they were served lunch also. And same thing if there is an evening shift for them also. That was the first thing. Second thing was, these people come by bus. So if after their shift, when they go out, there are hooligans there who will call them fisher women and so on, because they come from, some of them were good looking. They come from middle income group and so on. So they found it very, very, what shall I say, very agonizing for them to listen to all these comments and so on. So again, I called the personnel guy and said, can we run a bus for them again at no profit, no cost basis, so that they don't have to go through these insults and so on. Same story, I went to the manager. Went to my boss, who was general manager. He threw me out saying that, sorry, this is too much now. I took permission, went to the director, got his permission, came back and ran the bus at no, they will pay for the expenses. And the bus was there, so they didn't have to wait in the bus stops and listen to all these nonsensical comments. By the time they thought that I'm their representative, and what neither the union leader or the management would ever do, I was doing for them. They were willing to do anything for me. And all I want to say is that within 5.5 months, I got them to withdraw the petition from the CM's office. In another month's time, I signed an agreement with the union. And that was fantastic. In 4 sittings, we finalized, and in the 5th sittings, we signed the agreement, which normally takes anywhere from 20 to 30 sittings. Anyway, all I wanted to say was, that was the way in which they were responding when you were good to them. And they said the same thing like what your people told. And when finally I had to come away from there because my boss was completely against me. And also I knew that that was not my career path, and because that was not the division I would have liked to work for. So, and also because of various inside problem, after I did everything for them, I finally came out. And the union gave me a send-off, and the most difficult general secretary and the vice president went to the stage and said, "We will never have a manager like him. We never had one. We will never have one. This is the first and last send-off party being organized by the union and the workmen." And the director and the general manager were all sitting there, and I thought that was very kind of them, actually. So all I meant is, with relationships, you can get anything done. I broke records after records on production, and that year, for the first time, they made profit also. But because of various situations, finally I came out and I came and joined here in Hyderabad. Maybe Lord's decision. That's where I came across people like you. I got involved more in the ministry and other things, actually. Okay, that's it. Any questions I can take?
Yeah, I would like you to remember what we started with. When you looked at what are the characteristics of a leader, we said a person who trusts others, who
Yes.
relates with others. So keep that in mind, but that very quickly disappears once you get into the nitty-gritty of daily working. But we need to, so if you can just remember what we shared amongst ourselves as to what are the traits of a person who's able to extract work from others, that itself will give you a lot of insights.
Yeah, once you keep that trust, I think the loyalty almost become absolute. In the sense, I know that this guy is for me and he will do anything for me. So let me give my very, very best to him. So whether it's a union, whether it's your subordinate, and whether it's your colleagues also, even bosses, they know that, okay, this is the kind of person that I would like to be working with.
Thank you so much, both Lisa and Koshi sir. So many of the participants have agreed with all the points we have shared. And if you have given feedback, like, though it's the excellent attributes of being a leader, so it's still difficult to practice in the real world. So you would like to say anything about that, sir?
See, I practice in the real world.
Uh,
What happens actually? I know why it is difficult to practice, because you're going to face a lot of dangers. See, one advantage I had, and that is why I understand that comment. I had a big advantage. I was working in the government, so it's not easy to get rid of you from the government. Whereas in the private sector, you can lose your job far more easily, and so it becomes a bit difficult to practice. But on the other hand, I must tell you one thing. I worked in the government where you're dealing with very, very large number of people. I had an outstanding evaluation every year for more than 10 years in a row, and accelerated promotion, which is rare in the government. So one of the things I believe is this works and can be done, but it involves a lot of extra work because you're doing things which you're not paid for. I'm looking after the staff interest, which is actually the HR department's work, but I'm doing it. I'm getting into things which I need not. So there's a lot of extra work involved. And initially, like Koshi said, you may face some heat from bosses and things like that. But because in the long run, your delivery is far superior to the delivery of others, you will generally find that once you ride the difficult waves, things become very smooth after that. And things go well. But now, as I said, no, even fighting for your staff can involve difficult situations with your bosses and things like that. But ultimately, everyone is looking at performance. And as long as the performance is there, you're generally safe. Nobody will sack a person who's performing. But even that they will do, don't worry. So one of the things I say, unless you're ready to lose your job, you will never really be effective in your workplace.
Very well said, sir. Yeah, so Mr. Carl Ebenezer has also agreed with you about the vision driven rather than goal driven. So that is one new point, maybe we should say, not quite often we hear in the leadership practices. And Mr. Aldi has also agreed with you. So as a leader, we should not sit in a chair. Instead, like we should go around and work with a team to get the feel of real time atmosphere. So same with Mr. Vivek. So he thanked and yeah. So Dr. Sudhir have told it's very practical, and he also thanked you. So yes, so from the participants end, if you have any further questions or comments, we can take it. And I hope all of you have given the feedback in the link. So if any of you have any difficulty in accessing the link, please let us know. Any further comments? Thank you, Mr. Kar. So the video, the webinar is live on YouTube. So you can have the session accessed in our YouTube channel, Proventures YouTube channel anytime. So you can go back, refer to it. So it is available. And sir has already shared his email ID. So if you want any of you to get any further information about it, you can reach, and you can also write to us. So we will also speak to sir and get back to you if you need anything further about any topics on leadership or around this webinar. So if there are no further questions, I think we are good to close the webinar. So once again, we thank all the participants and Lisa especially. So it was one of the great webinars, and it is a lot more information for us to practice in the coming days. So thank you so much once again for joining this session, and we will get back to you. We will write to you about our upcoming webinars. So we will be doing it once in fortnight. So we will speak to you and we will intimate you about the upcoming topic. All right. So thank you so much. And I again request all of you to give your feedback about the session in the link. So it will help us to know what are the areas of improvement and what is that you liked about this webinar. So, and we will also share the feedback, the participation certificate, so you can claim your PDUs.
Okay.
Is there a feedback form?
It is given in the link, sir. Maybe like I can post it again. Yeah, I will post it now.
So those who given the feedback, you can get dropped. And thank you so much once again from me, from Proventures. Thank you, Brother Koshi, and thank you, Lisa. And we'll get in touch with you. Goodbye and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.